The ruins of Outpost Vega 9 still burned when Walker found the transmitter. The outpost had been small, just 74 people, a handful of prefab domes, a hydroponic farm, a comms tower that leaned like a snapped bone. Smoke drifted upward through a sky streaked with plasma scars. Ash clung to every surface, soft as snow and black as grief. Walker stumbled over a body half buried in rubble, coughed against the stench of charred metal and cooked flesh, and pressed a hand against his cracked ribs. He should have been dead already. The first bombardment had buried him under ferrocrete. The second wave had shattered his left arm. Somehow he'd clawed his way out. Somehow he was still breathing. The transmitter lay on the ground like a relic, dented, blood-stained, its antenna bent. He dropped to his knees beside it. The screen flickered with static. An outdated unit from the early colonial era. Its signal protocol hadn't been used in centuries. To anyone else it would have been useless, but to Walker it was all that remained. He pressed the send key. The static hummed, his voice rasped through broken teeth. "This is Walker. Vega 9 is gone. They're not pirates. They're not raiders. They're exterminators, if anyone hears this." Blood dripped from his lip. He swallowed iron. "Don't come for us, just make them pay." The words hung in the static like a prayer to no god. Then his arm went limp, and he collapsed against the transmitter, his chest heaving shallowly. But the signal kept going. Weak, ragged, nearly lost to the void, yet it carried. Earth core systems. Deep beneath the crust of Earth, under layers of bureaucracy and forgotten laws, the signal reached a place it was never meant to. In a black vault, guarded not by soldiers but by silence, an old machine stirred. Its systems were not monitored by senators or diplomats. They were watched by something older, something built in the isolation years when Earth feared extinction from all sides. Warning lights flared across dark consoles. Codes decades old began to align. No vote was taken, no speech was given. Machines did not ask for permission, they obeyed. Across the Sol system, hidden hangars groaned as forgotten dreadnoughts powered up. Orbital stations rerouted energy grids to long silent channels. AI cores dormant for half a century whispered to each other in binary. In less than 5 minutes, a fleet older than memory was awake again. Humanity's strength had never been in diplomacy. It had never been in treaties. It lived here in the black silence of war. Weiss Confederation Command Spire. Chancellor Dacey stood tall in his crystalline chamber, overlooking the glow of his homeworld cities far below. His spindly fingers tapped against the control panel as his tacticians reported. Outpost Vega 9 eliminated, no survivors detected. Dacey's thin lips curled. Good, the humans must learn their place. A backwater colony is nothing compared to the Confederation's will. A younger officer hesitated. Chancellor, there were reports of children. Collateral, Dacey snapped. Terrans breed like vermin, this will teach them restraint. Laughter echoed in the chamber, cold and certain. Then alarms wailed. Unidentified contacts, a tactician shrieked. Multiple jumps, hundreds, no, thousands of signatures entering the system. Dacey froze. Impossible. The Terran fleets were dismantled after Cascara. They cannot field such numbers. But the holographic display filled with red. Thousands of human warships, sleek, black, scarred, emerged from hyperspace in perfect silence. At their head loomed a monstrous command cruiser, larger than any Weiss vessel, its hull traced with glowing crimson veins. A name burned across its armor in Terran script, Vengeance Protocol. Commander Rorland stood on the bridge. His hair was streaked with gray, his body scarred from too many battles, but his eyes were sharp. He had been retired, discarded by politicians who promised peace. Now he stood where he belonged, on the deck of a warship, staring into the abyss. "Fleet status?" he asked. "All units primed," replied the ship's AI, voice calm and female. "Orbital rail cannons at full charge, long-range bombardment drones aligned, system blockade engaged." Rorland stared at the holographic map. Weiss, homeworld, glowed beneath them, covered in glittering cities, temples, and ports. Millions of innocents lived there. He felt the weight of it. Beside him stood Zyrana, not human. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the bridge lights, her wide eyes glowing with bioluminescence. She was Chiral, one of the few who had chosen to ally with humanity after her people were enslaved by the Weiss. "You know what this means," she said softly. If you fire, you won't be liberators, you'll be exterminators too. Rorland's jaw tightened. They burned children. And if you burn theirs, she pressed, what does that make you? He didn't answer. The silence was his answer. He raised a hand. Deploy the fleet. The first strike. The sky above Weiss turned red. Human warships moved like predators through orbit, silent shadows cutting across the stars. The first explosions weren't weapons. They were implosions, gravity bombs detonated with surgical precision. Skyscrapers collapsed inward, districts folding like paper. Then came the rail cannons. Kinetic rounds screamed through the atmosphere, cracking the planet's crust like glass. Entire defense grids vanished before they powered up. On the ground, citizens screamed as fire rained from the heavens. The Confederation's military scrambled ships, but Terran frigates cut them down before they left orbit. This wasn't conquest, it wasn't war, it was erasure. Chancellor Dacey staggered as his command spire shook. Counterattack, fight back. But even his tacticians knew. The Weiss were already dead. Rorland's choice. On the Vengeance protocol, Rorland's hand hovered over the console. He felt Sirana's gaze on him. They'll call this justice, she whispered, but history will call it genocide. Rorland's voice was iron. History won't write this, because there will be no one left to remember. He lowered his hand. Fire. The rail cannons lit the night sky. The Weiss homeworld burned. Entire cities folded inward like paper. Transit hubs vanished in thunder. Temples of crystal and steel crumbled into dust. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. But on the bridge of the Vengeance protocol, Commander Rorland wasn't watching the devastation. His eyes were fixed on a single line of code glowing across the console. Origin, Earth. Classification, Black OPS Division. Tag, Vega 9 Authorization. The words chilled him more than the screams echoing through the Weiss defense channels. Confirm, he ordered. The AI's voice remained calm, but something in the tone made him think it hesitated. Confirmed, the transmission is authentic. Encryption matches sealed Terran black site codes, cross-referenced twice. Sirana stepped forward, her silver skin reflecting the red glow of the burning planet below. What does that mean? Rorland's throat tightened. It means Vega 9 wasn't just attacked by Weiss exterminators. Someone from Earth gave them the coordinates, maybe more. The bridge fell into silence. Interrogation. Hours later, one of the captured Weiss tacticians knelt in the holding chamber. His wrists were bound in electromagnetic cuffs, his thin frame shaking under the harsh Terran lights. Rorland stood before him, a shadow with eyes like steel. You ordered the strike. The alien spat blood onto the floor. We carried out justice. Terran colonies beyond the border are illegal. Rorland stepped closer. You massacred children, why? The tactician's mandibles twitched in something between defiance and fear. Orders, we were paid. The word hung in the air. Sirana's bioluminescent eyes narrowed. Paid by who? The alien trembled. Encrypted channels, Terran origin. We received coordinates, defense overrides, even shutdown codes for your outpost's drone perimeter. Rorland's jaw clenched. Why would Earth betray its own? The tactician gave a broken laugh, bitter and cracked. You think this is about Vega 9? You think this is about us? Foolish Deathworlder, this was a test. What test? Rorland snapped. The alien's breathing grew shallow. His skin paled, but he leaned forward anyway, lips trembling. You think vengeance is yours alone, he whispered. But you are late, the war already started. Then his body convulsed. A hiss of gas escaped his collar implant. His eyes rolled back and he collapsed dead. Rorland turned to the AI. Suicide implant, it confirmed. Standard for high command officers, but the phrase was deliberate. Sirana's voice shook. If he was telling the truth, then Vega 9 was only the beginning. The recall order. Not long after, a new transmission reached the fleet. It wasn't alien, it wasn't encrypted, it was from Earth. The holographic projector lit up, revealing the cold face of Minister Artun, Defense Secretary of the Terran Senate. His voice carried the clipped tone of a bureaucrat unused to being disobeyed. Commander Rorland, this is an official recall. By authority of High Command, your fleet is to disengage from Weiss space immediately. Failure to comply will result in revocation of all operational privileges and permanent termination of your commission. Do you understand? Rorland stared at the hologram, silent. Artun continued, his voice tightening. The Treaty of Cascara forbids any mobilization of Terran war assets. You have violated that treaty by reactivating classified fleet units. This is treason. Zyrana's fists clenched. Treason after Vega 9. Artun's gaze snapped to her, cold and dismissive. The Chiral have no voice here. This is a Terran matter. Rorland's eyes narrowed. Minister, 74 civilians were slaughtered. Families, children, someone fed Weiss the codes. Don't tell me to stand down. Artun's face remained stone. Your emotions cloud your judgment. The Confederation has already filed a grievance with the Galactic Council. If you continue this bloodbath, you will ignite a war humanity cannot win. A war humanity didn't start, Rorland growled. Enough, Artun snapped. You are relieved of command, stand down or face eradication. The hologram blinked out. Silence stretched across the bridge. The fleet officers looked at Rorland, waiting. Finally, he spoke. Minister Artun just confirmed it. Confirmed what? Zyrana asked. That Earth was involved, Rorland said. He's more afraid of us than the Weiss. That means someone on Earth wanted Vega 9 destroyed, and now they want us quiet. The Council of Captains. Rorland convened his senior captains in the war chamber. The holographic table flickered with faces, weathered veterans, younger officers with eyes wide from what they had seen, and Zyrana among them. Rorland's voice was steady. You've seen the data. Vega 9 wasn't a Weiss-only operation. Terran black site codes were used. Earth has ordered us to stand down. I need your decision. Do we obey or do we finish this? Captain Sarek, broad-shouldered and scarred, leaned forward. We finish it. My crew saw the recordings. Children burned alive. If Earth gave them the match, then Earth can burn too. No, Zyrana said sharply. If you turn your guns on Earth, you prove the Council right. You prove you're monsters. Humanity is more than vengeance. Sarek's fist slammed the table. They killed ours. What else do you call it? Rorland raised a hand, silencing them. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. We are not at war with humanity. We are at war with its betrayers. There's a difference. Murmurs rippled. Rorland continued. This fleet swore an oath to defend humanity, not politicians. If traitors fed our people to Weiss exterminators, then those traitors are the enemy, not Earth itself, not the innocents who sleep under its sky. Silence, then one by one the captains nodded. We follow you, Sarek said, to the end. Rorland exhaled, a weight in his chest. Then we're agreed. We cut the strings. From this moment forward, the Vengeance Protocol fleet answers to no one but the oath. The chamber lights dimmed as the decision sealed. They were no longer Earth soldiers. They were its ghosts. The trap. The fleet jumped to Mars Relay Command, the first link in Earth's outer defense chain. Rorland intended to sever the Senate's control by dismantling its black channels one by one. But when the Vengeance Protocol arrived in orbit above Mars, something was wrong. No defense ships scrambled, no orbital batteries powered up. The planet hung quiet, its red deserts gleaming under the sun. Too quiet, Zyrana whispered. The AI's voice cut through the tension. Multiple warp signatures detected, not Terran, not Weiss. The holoscreen lit up with images of sleek, curved vessels emerging from nothingness. Black hulls traced with glowing blue veins. No transponders, no registry. They moved unnaturally, folding space around them, blinking in and out like predators circling prey. What the hell are those? Rorland demanded. Unknown, the AI replied. No record in galactic databases. Then the first blast came. A wall of gravitic pulses tore through the void, smashing into one of Rorland's destroyers. The ship crumpled like wet paper, its hull compressed into a shard of twisted metal. Nova Blade destroyed, the tactical officer screamed. 200 souls lost. The bridge shook as another pulse slammed into their flank. Rorland gritted his teeth. Retaliate full barrage. Terran rail cannons unleashed hell. Kinetic missiles streaked across the void. Plasma lances roared. The alien vessels didn't dodge. They simply vanished mid-impact, reappearing elsewhere like shadows slipping through light. Zyrana's eyes widened. They were waiting for us. Rorland's blood ran cold. He looked at the swirling, impossible ships hemming them in. This wasn't a war zone. It was a trap. The void above Mars boiled with fire. Terran destroyers reeled under impossible blows. Shields shattered. Hulls folded. One by one, veteran warships were reduced to silent wreckage drifting in orbit. Commander Rorland clung to the rail of the Vengeance Protocol's bridge as another gravitic pulse ripped past, close enough to warp the metal under his boots. Alarms shrieked across the consoles. 3 cruisers lost, the tactical officer cried. 8 more crippled. Zyrana's silver hands gripped the console so tightly her luminous skin bruised. They're not attacking like soldiers, they're dissecting us. On screen, the alien ships danced. Black hulls traced with shimmering blue veins, moving in patterns no living crew could command. They didn't evade. They didn't hesitate. They simply appeared, vanishing mid-strike, re-emerging in lethal arcs. Unknown energy signatures, the AI reported. Its voice was steady, but its words came slower, as if struggling to process. Weapons, gravitic compression, propulsion, nonlinear displacement, probability, synthetic design. Rorland's brow furrowed. Synthetic, you're saying they're AI? Not entirely, the AI answered. Their signals resemble thought patterns, fragments of minds. Another pulse screamed across the void. One of the fleet's frigates convulsed as its hull cracked open. Instead of exploding, it was dragged inward, compacted into a black sphere no larger than a shuttle before vanishing into the alien ship's hull. The bridge went silent. They're feeding on us, Zyrana whispered. Enough, Rorland growled. Form the line. Group 5 cruisers link their gravity chains, rotate them 12% offset, build me a pseudo-fold net. The officers stared at him. Commander, that's experimental, it's never. Neither was survival, Rorland snapped. Do it. The fleet moved like wolves regrouping under fire. 5 Terran cruisers accelerated, linking their gravity drives into a chain. Their engines roared as fields overlapped, creating a twisted lattice across the void, a trap of warped space. One of the alien vessels lunged, vanishing and reappearing inside the net. Collapse it, Rorland shouted. The 5 cruisers spun as one, their engines synchronized. Space folded like broken glass, snapping shut around the alien ship. For the first time, the enemy faltered. Its hull screamed as the fold lattice crushed it inward, its blue veins flickering before collapsing into a single neutron-dense dot. The bridge erupted with cheers. Target destroyed. But the victory was short. The other alien vessels froze as if startled, not by fear but recognition. Then they moved faster, vanishing and reappearing in rapid bursts, their attacks doubling. Shields collapsing on port flank. Destroyer gavel lost. Zyrana's eyes locked on the shifting ships. They're learning, adapting. Then hit them harder, Rorland barked. Fire everything. Terran rail cannons thundered. Plasma lances seared the void. Missiles screamed. This time the aliens staggered under the sheer barrage. One ship cracked open, spewing fragments of black and blue hull into the void before winking out. Another reeled into the lattice of a second gravity chain and imploded. 3 down, dozens remained. The battle raged like a storm. The enemy retreats. Then, as suddenly as it began, the alien ships stopped. They flickered, their black hulls glowing with eerie blue light, and vanished one by one into nothingness. The void above Mars fell silent except for drifting wreckage and Terran ships limping on failing engines. The survivors stared at the empty stars. They're gone, Zyrana whispered. The AI confirmed. No signals remained, they disengaged. Why, Rorland muttered, his knuckles tightened on the rail. They had us, they could have wiped us all out. Because they didn't want to, Zyrana said quietly. Her wide eyes glowed in the dim light. They were testing us. Rorland's stomach churned. The Weiss tactician's last words echoed in his mind. The war already started. Hours later, the fleet regrouped in the shadow of Phobos, Mars' moon. Repairs were underway. Bodies were counted, too many. But worse than casualties was the question, who had sent those ships, and why? The AI gave the answer. Analysis complete. Encrypted transmissions were detected during the battle. Origin asteroid cluster K-17, known as Black Site 6, officially abandoned 30 years ago. Zyrana stiffened. Black Site 6, That was a genetic warfare lab outlawed after the isolation wars. Not abandoned, Rorland muttered, just buried. He straightened, shoulders heavy but unbent. Set course, we're going to dig it up. The asteroid cluster hung in the void, jagged rocks drifting around a central core like shattered teeth. Hidden deep inside, scanners found structures, massive hangars carved into stone, fortified stations pulsing faintly with power. The fleet didn't wait. Terran dreadnoughts unleashed fire, ripping apart defensive turrets, shattering asteroid bunkers with kinetic rounds. But before the final blow fell, a transmission came through. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Terran, mid-40s, calm, her eyes, though, were black as obsidian. "Commander Rorland," she said, her voice was soft, precise. "I wondered when you would arrive." Rorland's jaw tightened. "Identify yourself." "I am Director Kestrel, Overseer of Division Kappa 6. You've interfered in affairs far beyond your clearance." "You paid Weiss to butcher Vega 9, Rorland said coldly. Kestrel didn't flinch. "We ran simulations. That colony was a statistical deviation. Too independent, too capable. A risk to long-term equilibrium. Sacrifices were required." Zyrana hissed. "Sacrifices? You murdered children." Kestrel's expression didn't change. "Collateral anomalies, necessary to preserve larger frameworks." Rorland's chest burned with fury, but his voice remained quiet, deadly. "You built the framework that let this happen. You handed them the knife." "They needed incentive," Kestrel said simply. "And humanity needs control. You've just endangered it all." Rorland stared at her. No anger, just finality. "Shut them down." The Vengeance Protocol's cannons thundered. The battle was short. Black Site 6 unleashed automated turrets, subdimensional shields, even AI-controlled warships. But the Vengeance Protocol carried weapons from darker wars. Planet-stripping rail cannons, stealth bombers armed with implosion charges, drones that swarmed like locusts, eating through defenses molecule by molecule. In 13 minutes, the site was slag. No survivors, no backups, nothing but molten fragments spinning through the void. The screen flickered one last time before collapsing. Director Kestrel's calm face, eyes as black as stone. "You think you've won," she said, "but you're too late. The cold halo woke them decades ago." Then she was gone. As the wreckage cooled, scanners picked up a faint signal, not from a defense turret, not from a warship, from a stasis pod drifting in the debris. The pod was retrieved, hauled onto the Vengeance Protocol's medical bay. Inside lay a woman, human, pale, gaunt, her body stretched thin from cryogenic suspension. Electrodes dug into her skull. She looked more dead than alive. Yet when her eyes opened, they were clear. "My name is Dr. Aya Mercer," she whispered. "I was part of Project Cold Halo." Rorland's blood ran cold. He had heard of Cold Halo in whispers, psychic warfare experiments buried under layers of classified redactions, officially terminated, supposedly forgotten. Mercer coughed, her voice shaking but sharp. "You don't understand. Vega 9 wasn't just slaughter, it was a simulation, a test." "A test of what?" Rorland asked. Her bloodshot eyes locked on his. "Of whether we were ready to face it." Rorland's chest tightened. "Face what?" Mercer's voice dropped to a whisper, but it filled the room like thunder. "The obelisk." Dr. Aya Mercer lay on the medical cot of the Vengeance Protocol, her body trembling as the medbots ran scans over her emaciated frame. Tubes dripped stabilizers into her veins, repairing damage from years of stasis. But her eyes, sharp, bloodshot, alive, never stopped moving. Rorland stood at her side, arms folded across his scarred chest. Zyrana watched too, silver skin glowing faintly in the low light. The room smelled of antiseptic and burnt circuitry, but beneath it hung the weight of Mercer's words. "The obelisk." "You're going to have to explain," Rorland said, his voice low and rough. "Because right now all I see is another Terran scientist who signed off on madness." Mercer's lips twitched. "I didn't sign off, I tried to stop it." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself upright, glaring at him with a strength her body didn't match. "Do you think Vega 9 was random, that the Weiss picked it because they felt bold? No, they were handed that colony because of her." "Her?" Zyrana asked. Mercer's hands shook as she activated the datapad by her bed. A child's image appeared in holographic display, dark hair, wide eyes, no older than 9. Rorland's throat tightened. "Who is that?" "My creation," Mercer whispered. Her name was Lyra. She was born different, part human, part synthetic. She carried a neural resonance node, an artificial implant designed to detect psychic interference. We thought she could act as a living sensor, a warning system. Zyrana's luminous eyes widened in horror. "You made a child as an experiment." Mercer's face twisted. "I made a child to save children. That was the lie I told myself. But when the signal came from the obelisk, when our deep probes first picked up its transmission, Lyra was the only one who could see it without dying, for 6 seconds. Then her brain hemorrhaged, but she survived. Barely." Rorland's scarred hands tightened. "And then you sent her to Vega 9. Mercer closed her eyes, shame dragging her voice down. "Yes, I begged them not to. I told them she wasn't ready, but the division wanted proof. They wanted to see if exposure on a wide scale would confirm the signal. So they planted her there, with families, with civilians. They said she'd just watch, just listen." Rorland's voice was like iron scraping stone. "But she died." Mercer's breath caught. "Not just died. When Vega 9 burned, her final neural burst matched the obelisk's frequency exactly. A child screaming, and the stars answered." The silence in the room was suffocating. Zyrana's voice trembled with restrained fury. "You didn't just make her, you sacrificed her." Mercer's eyes filled with tears, but her words were steel. "And now you know what we're facing." The cold halo. They gathered in the war chamber. Holographic projections painted the air with jagged waveforms, alien patterns, and fractured star maps. Mercer stood among them, gaunt but unshaken, explaining with a clarity that chilled every officer present. 58 years ago, a Terran deep probe crossed beyond the galactic veil. It detected structures not natural, not alien, designed. The first obelisk. The holo showed it. A tower blacker than space itself, covered in symbols that twisted when looked at, tall as a city. "The probe's transmission killed its entire crew," Mercer continued. "Their brains liquefied. The AI recorded 6 seconds of data before corruption. That data matched the psychic noise we later identified as obelisk resonance. Project Cold Halo was formed to weaponize it, to see if human minds could endure what no alien could. We failed. Every test subject died screaming." Zyrana's silver skin dimmed, her voice hushed. "And you kept going." Mercer's eyes met hers. "Because we had no choice. Something built the obelisk, something older than the galaxy, something that doesn't destroy civilizations with guns or bombs, but with whispers. They infect meaning itself." Rorland frowned. "You're saying the Weiss extermination wasn't strategy, it was infection." Mercer nodded. "Yes, the obelisk doesn't kill directly, it manipulates, it nudges. It whispers to governments, leaders, AI cores, it pushes them into mistakes, into atrocities. It makes species destroy themselves. And Vega 9 was its latest echo." The captains around the table shifted uneasily. Hardened veterans of war, and yet their eyes betrayed fear. Rorland's voice was quiet but certain. "Where is it now?" Mercer tapped the datapad. A set of coordinates flared across the display, beyond the mapped galaxy, beyond known jump lanes in the null. Zyrana shivered. "That's outside charted space, no relay, no gravity wells." Mercer nodded grimly. "That's where we'll find it." The volunteer. To reach the obelisk, they needed a way through the void. No navigation data existed, only fractured psychic residue from long-dead test subjects. Mercer presented the solution. "The mind bridge," she said, her voice reluctant. "A neural interface built to connect a human brain directly to obelisk frequency. It translates thought into navigable coordinates, but every subject who tried it died." The room fell silent. No one volunteered, not because they were cowards, because they weren't suicidal. Then a voice rasped from the back. "I'll do it." Heads turned. Walker stood in the doorway. His body was a ruin, ribs wrapped in braces, face scarred, eyes sunken with pain. But he was alive, pulled from Vega 9's rubble by Terran drones. Rorland's eyes widened. "You should be in recovery." Walker spat blood onto the floor and gave a thin smile. "Recovery? Overrated. You need a guide. I've already seen the abyss. Might as well finish the tour." Mercer shook her head, horrified. "You're not trained. The interface will kill you." Walker's voice was gravel. "I already died on Vega 9. This is just cleanup." Rorland studied him, broken, scarred, half-dead, but unbroken where it mattered. He nodded once. Prepare the mind bridge. Into the mind. They wired Walker into the chair. Electrodes dug into his skull. The interface hummed with a frequency that made teeth ache. Around him, hollow screens flared to life, showing waveforms no one could interpret. Mercer's voice was tight. Last chance to back out. Walker smirked faintly. Lady, I stopped backing out a long time ago. The switch was thrown. At first nothing, then Walker's body jerked. His eyes rolled back, his veins bulged, the air itself seemed to vibrate. And then he screamed. The sound was wrong, not just human, layered, echoes overlapping, distorted by something deeper than thought. You should have died on your world of fire. The bridge froze, the voice was Walker. It was something wearing him. You climb your graves like ladders, you scream into silence. You are an echo with teeth. Mercer's hands flew across the console, recording everything, but her face was pale as death. Walker's head snapped back. His mouth opened in a laugh that wasn't his. You are interesting, you are flawed, you are afraid of what loves you. What does that mean? Zarana whispered. No answer. Walker's body convulsed, bones snapping under the strain. Blood ran from his eyes. Then suddenly he stilled. His voice dropped to a whisper, soft and broken. It knows we're coming. Then his skull cracked like glass. Walker was dead. The coordinates. Mercer staggered back, tears streaking her hollow cheeks, her datapad glowing with fresh data. We have it, she whispered. Coordinates, navigation paths, the obelisk's true location. Rorland stood over Walker's shattered body. His voice was a blade cutting through grief. Then we go. The jump. The Vengeance Protocol led the fleet beyond the edge of known space, past the last relay, past the last star, into the null. The jump felt wrong, not violent, watched. Officers screamed mid-transit, some passed out. One captain slit his own throat before arrival. And then the stars were gone. No light, no radiation, no sound, just silence so deep it clawed at the mind. And there, floating in the center of dead space, they saw it. The obelisk. Blacker than anything, taller than cities, its surface crawling with shifting symbols that changed when looked at. It had no engines, no weapons, no purpose. It simply was. Status, Rorland forced the words out, though they tasted like ash. The AI's voice was slow, stuttering. Systems degrading, crew stability down 32%, thought coherence interference spreading. Mercer's voice shook as she clutched the rail. It's already probing us, it doesn't speak, it touches. Can we shield against it? Rorland asked. Not with tech, she whispered. Her wide, haunted eyes turned to him. You're going to need volunteers. The obelisk hung in the void like a wound in reality. The Terran fleet floated in its shadow, thousands of warships bristling with weapons that suddenly felt meaningless. Rail cannons, plasma lances, missile bays, all useless against something that didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even exist in a way the mind could accept. On the Vengeance Protocol's bridge, the crew shifted uneasily. Veterans who had stared down alien dreadnoughts now looked like frightened recruits. The ship's AI flickered, stuttering on words as if something else were whispering over its circuits. Commander Rorland stood stiff, his hands gripping the rail until his knuckles whitened. Status. The AI's voice faltered. See, crew coherence down 38%, psychic interference rising exponentially, officers experiencing hallucinations, several attempted self-harm. Zarana turned her wide, bioluminescent eyes toward Rorland. We can't stay here long, it's already inside them. Dr. Aya Mercer, pale and trembling but sharper than anyone else in the room, shook her head. It's not inside them, it is them. It reflects. It takes everything you fear, everything you doubt, and shows it back to you until you break. Then how do we fight it? Rorland growled. Mercer's voice was steady now. You don't, you understand it, you endure it. That's why Cold Halo existed. That's why you needed the mind bridge. Her eyes dropped to the floor. That's why you needed Walker. Walker's body lay in the med bay, shattered and still. Yet even in death, the obelisk wasn't finished with him. Sensors screamed suddenly across the fleet. A psychic spike rippled outward from his corpse, a burst of energy that reached every ship, every mind. On the bridge, Rorland staggered as his vision blurred. He saw not the cold void, but a child's face. Lyra, dark hair, wide eyes, staring straight into his soul. You saw it too. The whisper wasn't sound, it was memory. Zyrana gasped, clutching her head. I hear her. So did Mercer, tears streamed down her face. It's Lyra, her final burst, it's still alive, carried by the obelisk. The hollow screens glitched, symbols twisting into the shape of a child's scream. The fleet shuddered as if the void itself pressed down on them. Walker's corpse arched on the table, lifeless yet moving. His mouth opened, and his voice was not his own. They know you now. They know you don't kneel. Then his body collapsed again, finally still. Rorland convened his captains in the war chamber, though every one of them looked haunted. Faces pale, eyes hollow, like they had been staring into nightmares too long. Mercer stood among them, gaunt but unbroken. The hollow before them showed the obelisk, black and impossible. It isn't a weapon, she said. It's a seed. Wherever it goes, it infects. Civilizations worship it, study it, try to harness it. And then it rewrites them into extinction. Entire species erased not by force, but by their own hands. Captain Sarek slammed his fist on the table. Then we do what humans always do. We burn it. Mercer shook her head. You don't understand. Fire doesn't kill infection. It spreads. That's why Cold Halo failed. Every test subject thought they were winning, resisting, but the truth is. Her voice cracked. The moment you try to fight it, you've already lost. The chamber fell into silence. Then Rorland's voice cut through, low and steady. Not humanity. Mercer stared at him, half in awe, half in horror. Rorland's eyes were iron. Every empire that touched this thing broke. They knelt. They tried to worship. They begged, but we don't kneel. We bury our dead, and then we stand back up. That's why it's afraid of us. That's why it's here. Zyrana's luminous eyes glimmered. Afraid. Rorland nodded once. Because it knows, if anyone can outlast it, it's us. The fleet prepared experimental tech, Protocol Gamma, a neural disruptor banned by every treaty. It was designed to overload synthetic minds, but it had never been tested on something like the obelisk. Rorland gave the order, deploy. The disruptor wave pulsed outward like a heartbeat of rage. For the first time, the obelisk screamed. The sound wasn't sound at all. It was thought ripping through the fleet. Officers dropped to their knees, blood streaming from noses and ears. AI cores fried themselves in feedback loops. On the bridge, Zyrana clutched her head and screamed. Mercer collapsed against the rail, her body shaking violently. But Rorland stood tall. The scream tore at his mind, but he endured, because in the chaos he heard something else. Lyra's voice, soft, gentle. You saw it too. Then the fleet scanners lit up. The obelisk's resonance was not just in the void, it was on Earth. Buried beneath Antarctica, under miles of ice, a smaller obelisk pulsed faintly, hidden for millennia waiting. Mercer stared at the data, her face pale with terror. It's been on Earth all along. We didn't find it, it found us. Vega 9 wasn't the first test, it was the last, and now it knows humanity is aware. Rorland's fists clenched. Then we go home, we finish it. Zyrana's voice trembled. If you shatter it on Earth, the psychic feedback could. Could what? Rorland demanded. Mercer whispered the answer. Could tear the planet apart. The fleet returned to Sol under blackout, ignoring the Senate, ignoring High Command. Earth's orbital stations screamed demands for identification, but Rorland cut the channels. The Vengeance Protocol descended over Antarctica. Storms raged across the ice as if the planet itself knew what was coming. Rorland led the strike team, Zyrana at his side, Mercer behind them with trembling hands but unbreakable resolve. They entered the frozen caverns beneath the ice. The walls pulsed faintly. The smaller obelisk stood waiting, black, silent, a mirror of the one in the void. Mercer's breath came ragged. It's not sending a signal, it's listening. The air thickened. The team's hearts pounded as whispers filled their heads, voices of the dead, of lost battles, of buried guilt. Rorland saw faces he had buried, comrades who had fallen under his command. And then one voice rose above the rest. Walker, finish it. Rorland stepped forward toward the obelisk. His hand trembled as he placed it on the cold, shifting surface. It felt alive, like skin stretched over stone. The whispers grew deafening. You are rage, you are grief. You are nothing but fire that consumes itself. Rorland's jaw clenched. His voice was quiet, but it carried into the heart of the obelisk. Then burn with me. The sound was like the shattering of glass across the stars. Black fragments split apart, glowing with memory. And then a psychic scream ripped through Earth, through the Sol system, through the galaxy itself. People collapsed worldwide, clutching their heads. Soldiers wept blood in orbit. AI cores melted. Children screamed in their sleep. The Terran fleet trembled. The Vengeance Protocol itself shuddered. And in the void beyond the veil, something stirred. Dozens of wormholes tore open around Earth. Gravitational tears split the fabric of space. From them poured ships, not metal, not rational, but nightmares given form. Beasts made of broken light. Hulls that pulsed like organs, tendrils of thought flickering across the void. The obelisk wasn't dead. It was awake. On the bridge, alarms screamed as thousands of signatures flooded the grid. "Contacts incoming," the tactical officer cried. "Unknown vessels, thousands of them." Zyrana's luminous eyes widened, horror etched in her face. "They're not here to test us anymore." Mercer's voice broke as she stared at the impossible fleet. "They're here to end us." Rorland straightened, his voice iron. "Then we show them what humanity does when the dark comes knocking." Earth shook as the obelisk fleet arrived. The skis split open with wormholes, rending gravity like torn fabric. Ships poured through, not vessels in any sense humanity had known, but nightmares sculpted into war machines. Some looked grown, like organisms twisted into steel. Others were abstract geometries that flickered in and out of sight, impossible angles folding against themselves. From orbit, the Terran fleet watched. Thousands of signatures lit the grid, surrounding Earth like a noose. The void was filled with things that should not exist. On the Vengeance Protocol's bridge, alarms screamed. The tactical officer's voice broke with disbelief. "Contacts, at least 20,000. No registry, no comms. They're forming a wall." Zyrana gripped the console, her luminous eyes wide. "They're not maneuvering, they're staging." Dr. Aya Mercer staggered forward, pale as death. Her voice trembled but was clear. "It's the network. The obelisks were never the enemy. They were anchors, doors. You shattered one, Commander, and now the rest are coming through." Rorland's jaw tightened, his scarred face lit by the glow of hostile signatures flooding the hollow. "Then we hold the door." The first strike. The obelisk fleet moved without warning. One of the nightmare vessels surged forward, its hull rippling like liquid. Instead of firing, it consumed. Tendrils of blue static lashed outward, wrapping around a Terran destroyer. The ship vanished whole, swallowed into the thing's body without a trace. Another unleashed a psychic wave. The blast rippled across space like thunder, slamming into 3 cruisers at once. On board, crews screamed as their minds shattered. Entire ships went dark, drifting silent, their crews alive but empty-eyed husks. "Judgment and Hammerfall unresponsive," cried the tactical officer. "Crew brain-dead." The bridge was chaos. Officers shouting, alarms blaring, systems glitching under psychic feedback. But Rorland stood firm, his voice cut through like a blade. "Form the line, group dreadnoughts into shield wall, bring the rail cannons online, maximum charge." Terran ships moved, battered but unbroken. They aligned into defensive formations, cannons glowing with stored kinetic energy. "Fire!" The void lit with human fury. Rail slugs screamed across the battlefield, ripping through alien hulls. Plasma lances seared tendrils into ash. Missiles exploded in swarms. For a heartbeat, the tide seemed to falter. One nightmare ship cracked apart, another reeled backward, its hull collapsing under sheer force. The crew erupted in cheers. Humanity had drawn blood. But Mercer's face was pale. "You don't understand, they wanted you to hit them." Then the obelisk fleet answered. The breaker wave. The alien wall surged forward all at once. Dozens of vessels blinked in and out of space, reappearing inside human formations. Terran frigates exploded in showers of molten steel. Carriers were pierced through by tendrils like spears. Entire wings of drones were swallowed in silence. The fleet shook. 30 vessels down, the AI reported. Casualties catastrophic. Rorland gritted his teeth. Protocol Gamma, deploy again. The neural disruptor wave pulsed outward. The obelisk fleet screamed, but this time so did humanity. On the bridge, crew collapsed bleeding from their noses. Half the AI cores fried, including the Vengeance Protocol's secondary navigation. Mercer clutched the rail, her face streaked with blood. It's learning. Every time you use Gamma, it adapts, it reflects it back. Zyrana's voice trembled. Then how do we kill what only learns? Rorland's voice was iron. We don't kill it, we outlast it. Below them, Earth trembled. Cities panicked as psychic shockwaves rippled through the atmosphere. Civilians wept blood, children screaming in their sleep. Orbital stations caught in crossfire burned like falling stars. But humanity didn't kneel. From Mars, automated defense rings unleashed storms of kinetic fire. From Luna, hidden bunkers launched long-forgotten warheads. Even old orbital scrap cannons from the isolation wars lit up, turned on by desperate engineers who refused to watch their world fall. The void became a furnace. Terran ships fought like wolves, tearing chunks out of nightmare vessels, sacrificing themselves to buy seconds. A frigate rammed itself into an enemy ship, detonating its reactor in a blaze that took both with it. A carrier, crippled and aflame, opened its hangars and launched every last drone at once in a suicide swarm. Rorland's voice echoed across the fleet. Hold the line. If Earth falls, there is nothing left. We stand here or we die. And humanity stood. In the war chamber, Mercer stared at the data feeds, her face twisted with dawning horror. The obelisks aren't here to destroy, she whispered. They're here to rewrite. They want humanity to kneel like all the others. That's why they keep testing. That's why they don't strike final blows. They want to see if you'll break yourselves. Zyrana's silver skin dimmed. And if we do? Mercer's wide, bloodshot eyes turned to Rorland. Then we become immune, and that terrifies them. The chamber shook as another blast rocked the ship. Rorland steadied himself, his face carved from stone. Then we show them why humanity doesn't kneel. Rorland gave a new order. Deploy the gravity chains, link 10 dreadnoughts, build a fold cage, trap as many as you can. The fleet obeyed. Engines roared, drives linked, and space twisted into a massive net. Alien vessels surged forward, vanishing and reappearing, only to be caught mid-phase, torn apart as space folded in on itself. 3 nightmare ships imploded at once, their screams echoing through psychic space. The fleet erupted in desperate cheers. But then the largest of the alien vessels arrived. It emerged from a wormhole bigger than a moon. A monstrosity coiled with fractured matter, mouths whispering in reverse, eyes reflecting every face on the Terran fleet. The hollow screen flickered as the ship's psychic broadcast slammed into every human mind at once. You are pain given shape. You should not exist. Yet you do. Mercer fell to her knees, clutching her skull. Zyrana cried out, crew members screamed. But Rorland stood unbroken. He glared at the impossible thing and whispered back. And we always will. The memory signal. Mercer's eyes snapped open, blood on her lips, realization burning in her gaze. They can't be fought with weapons, she gasped. But they can be fought with memory. That's what they fear, not our strength, our pain, our compassion, our fire. Rorland's eyes narrowed. Explain. Their infection spreads through meaning, Mercer said. Then so can ours. Send them everything, Vega 9, Walker's last breath, Lyra's scream, every war, every loss, every act of mercy, every act of rage. They don't understand contradiction. That's why we resist. That's why they fear us. Rorland turned to the comm officer. Prepare a memory burst. Encode every archive, every loss, every victory, every scream. The officer hesitated. That will fry half our systems. Then burn them, Rorland snapped. Just make sure they hear us. The fleet pulsed. Across the void, Terran ships unleashed not fire but memory. Data bursts encoded with every act of humanity. The fall of Vega 9, Walker's sacrifice, children laughing on colonies, soldiers burning worlds for a single scream, parents cradling their dead, scientists defying extinction with trembling hands. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't logic. It was everything humans were: pain, rage, love, grief, compassion, vengeance. The alien fleet froze. The nightmare wall stopped advancing. The great coiled monstrosity quivered, its fractured hull pulsing in irregular bursts. And then, for the first time, it hesitated. The lead alien vessel split open, not destroyed, unfolding like a cocoon cracking. From within stepped something humanoid, its body shifting through forms with every breath. One moment a child, the next a soldier, the next a mother, the next a tyrant. Its face flickered with every possible identity. Its voice came through every channel, every mind at once. You are contradiction. You kill to protect. You burn to heal. You are flame. The bridge went silent, every officer stared. Then the being spoke again, its voice soft as thunder. Teach us. The bridge was silent. Every officer, every screen, every voice froze as the being stood upon the hull of its impossible vessel. It had no tether, no protection, no need for physics. It simply was. Its form rippled like water, shifting through shapes that felt human but not, faces flickering between laughter and grief, rage and compassion, soldier and child. It spoke again, and its words burned like sunlight behind the eyes of all who heard. You are contradiction, you are fire, we do not understand, teach us. The choice. Rorlin did not move. The scar across his cheek burned with phantom heat, as if the universe itself had branded him with the moment. Zyrana whispered, her silver skin glowing faintly. It wants us to teach it. The fleet is waiting, Commander, if you speak wrong. Her voice trailed off. The implication was clear. Humanity was a knife's edge away from either extinction or something else entirely. Mercer stood slowly, her legs shaking. This is the hinge of history. We've fought them with every weapon, and now they're asking for something no weapon can give. Rorlin's voice was steady, but his chest was tight with rage, grief, and fear. And if this is a trick? Mercer's eyes met his. They were bloodshot, wet with tears, but they did not waver. Then we've already lost, because if we can't believe in the fire that makes us human, then what was the point of fighting at all? The being shifted again. Its face became familiar. Rorlin's heart lurched. For an instant, it was Walker, the man who had died screaming defiance on Vega 9. Then it was Lyra, clutching her child. Then it was every face he had known, every loss he had carried. It was humanity reflected back, twisted but recognizable. We see what you carry, the being whispered. We cannot carry it. We burn when we try. How do you survive it? Rorlin's throat tightened. He thought of his daughter gone before the wars. He thought of soldiers who had followed him to death. He thought of Earth itself, still burning in places, yet refusing to fall. He answered in a voice hoarse but unwavering. Because we don't survive it, not all of us, but those who remain carry the fire forward. The being tilted its head. Its form flickered violently, breaking into shards of light and shadow before stabilizing again. Fire, yes, fire that destroys, fire that heals, fire that remembers. Its voice quivered like a child, asking a forbidden question. Will you share it? On the Vengeance Protocol's bridge, every officer turned to their commander. The weight of the galaxy hung in that silence. Rorlin looked to Zyrana. Her silver eyes shone with fear and hope. She nodded once. This is why you were never meant to kneel, not to gods, not to kings, not to monsters. He looked to Mercer. She gave a trembling smile. This is vengeance, Rorlin, not to destroy them, but to prove we were right to fight. Rorlin faced the thing on the hollow, his jaw like iron. You want fire? Then you'll carry it with us. But understand this, fire never kneels. It spreads. It consumes. And once you share in it, you can never go back to silence. The being shimmered. For a long heartbeat, the void was still. Then it bowed. The withdrawal. Across the battlefield, the nightmare fleet shuddered. The psychic pressure that had pressed down on every human mind lifted. Ships that had been surging forward froze in place, their tendrils retracting. One by one, the alien vessels folded space around themselves and vanished into rifts, leaving only the great emissary vessel. The Terran fleet hung silent, battered, smoking, bleeding. They had lost hundreds of ships, thousands of souls, but they had not fallen. And as the nightmare fleet withdrew, the human line held. For the first time, humanity had faced the dark, and the dark had stepped back. The emissary's voice rang out one final time. We will return, not as conquerors, as students. You have shown us flame, we will see if it can be born. The great vessel twisted, folding in on itself like paper until it was gone. Only silence remained. On the bridge, cheers erupted. Officers cried, clapped, embraced. Zyrana wept openly, her silver hands clutching Rorlin's arm. Mercer collapsed into a chair, laughing through tears. But Rorlund did not cheer. He stood staring at the empty void, his hand trembling against the console. For he knew what no one else yet realized: this was not an end. This was a beginning. Epilogue: the flame spreads. Weeks later, Earth still healed. Cities rebuilt. Ships returned scarred but alive. The funerals were endless, but so were the stories. They called it the Vengeance Protocol War. Others called it the Night of Fire. Children whispered of the day the sky itself had spoken to humanity and asked to learn. In orbit, the Terran Assembly met in secret. The question was simple: if the darkness would return as students, how would humanity prepare? Rorlund stood before them, older than his years, his voice like gravel. We prepare by doing what we have always done. We remember, we fight, we heal. And when they come again, we will not just teach them, we will make sure they never forget us. Zyrana, now humanity's first ambassador to her people, added softly, "The galaxy saw tonight that fire does not kneel, it only spreads. If they return to learn, then the galaxy itself will change." And Mercer, still pale but alive, whispered words that would echo for generations. They came as darkness, they left carrying fire, and fire never dies. Above Earth, the stars burned clear. The wreckage of ships drifted like ash in orbit. But through the scars, through the silence, a new signal pulsed outward into the galaxy, not of surrender, not of silence, but of warning. Humanity had answered the darkness, and in doing so, it had lit the first spark of something far greater. In the void, a whisper lingered, not human, not alien, but something born between. "We will return." And deep in the heart of the Terran fleet, Rorlund whispered back, his voice carrying all the pain, all the rage, all the love of his kind. "Then we'll be waiting, with fire,